Deterrence AI, the leading blog in proactive security.
Okay, so you folks listening have really flagged this critical alert that came out back in April of 2025 about deepfake security. And honestly, it sounds like something straight out of like, a sci-fi thriller or something like that.
Right. It's scary stuff.
Let's cut through the hype and figure out what we really need to understand about this fast-moving threat.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good place to start is just making sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
About, what deepfakes actually are.
What are we even talking about here?
Right. So when we say deepfakes, just imagine AI that can create videos and audio that's so realistic.
Oh, wow.
That your brain pretty much just assumes that that's the real deal.
Yeah.
It's basically like digital forgery.
Yeah.
But on a scale that we've never seen before.
Right.
And it's evolving incredibly quickly.
Okay, so how does a computer learn how to do that? What's the magic behind it?
Yeah, you can think of it like this kind of ongoing battle between two AI systems.
Right.
One AI system, the generator is trying to create like a fake video or audio clip.
Right.
And then you have another AI system, the discriminator. And the discriminator's job is to basically act like a detective and try and spot the fake.
Good job.
And so they basically go back and forth learning from each other. So every time the discriminator spots a fake, the generator learns from that and gets better.
Oh, wow.
And every time the generator fools the discriminator, the discriminator gets a little better.
That's so cool.
So it's this constant competition.
Right.
And that's actually what leads to the incredible realism we see in deepfakes.
That makes sense.
And you'll sometimes hear this referred to as a GAN.
Oh, yeah.
A generative adversarial network.
Gene.
Oh.
It's a cool concept.
So it's like an arms race within the AI itself.
That's making them so good.
Yeah, I see.
And then you also have things like auto-encoders.
Right, yeah, the alert mentioned those.
Yeah.
What are auto-encoders?
So auto-encoders take a slightly different approach.
Okay.
Think of it like an AI that's trying to understand the essence of something, like your face.
Okay.
And it learns to compress all of those like really unique features about your face into a kind of digital fingerprint.
Oh, wow.
And once it's got that fingerprint, it can basically reconstruct your face from that.
Oh, wow.
Or it can take your smile, for instance,
and
put it on someone else in a video.
So you can make someone in a video smile who's never smiled before.
Exactly. Even if they never actually smiled like that.
Oh, that's wild.
That's the power of these auto-encoders.
That's scary.
Yeah, so it's not a great...
It's powerful.
Combination, right?
Yeah.
Powerful technology in the hands of potentially bad actors.
Yeah, I mean, the alert mentions that it's getting much easier.
For, not even super techie people to get their hands on this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really concerning things about deepfakes right now is that the barrier to entry has really plummeted.
Right.
In the past, you needed really specialized equipment.
Yeah.
Expensive software.
Yeah.
And a lot of technical expertise.
Right.
But these days, there are user-friendly tools out there.
Yeah.
Readily available computing power is a lot cheaper than it used to be.
Right.
So it's not just limited to, well-funded research labs or nation states anymore.
It's more democratized, I guess you could say.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
And that's really what ramps up the threat level for all of us.
So the goal of this deep dive isn't just to sort of give folks a heads up about deepfakes.
Right.
It's to really get into the security risks and how we can actually stop this from becoming even a bigger problem.
Absolutely.
And your source points to 5 specific ways that we can deter this threat.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to not just focus on the problem, but to focus on the solutions.
Right.
Because there are things that we can do to mitigate this threat.
Okay, so let's jump in.
Okay.
In 2025, it really sounds like deepfakes have gone from, kind of a funny novelty on the internet to a real security problem for everyone.
I think you're right. It's gone from sort of the entertainment realm into something that has very real consequences.
Right. And it's not just that they exist, right?
Right,
It's that they're getting harder and harder to tell apart from the real thing.
That's the scary part because AI is getting so good.
Yeah, the source really emphasizes that this increasing realism.
And, it used to be that you could kind of spot a deepfake.
Yeah.
There'd be something off about the way someone was blinking.
Right.
Or the lighting wouldn't quite match up. But those subtle cues are starting to vanish.
Right.
Because the AI is getting so sophisticated that it can iron out those wrinkles.
So we can't just trust our eyes and ears anymore.
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to think critically about the information that you're consuming.
And it's not just, they're realistic, right?
Right.
The alert mentions this idea of personalization at scale, and that sounds like super sneaky.
It is. It's a very targeted approach.
So how does that work?
Well, think of it like this. Imagine you get an email.
Okay.
And the email includes a video message.
Yeah.
From someone that you know.
Okay.
Someone that you trust.
Right.
And they're referencing specific details that only they would know.
Yeah.
And they're asking you to do something urgent.
Right.
Transfer some money or share some sensitive data.
Oh, wow.
Now, that level of personalization makes these scams so much more believable than, just your typical phishing attempt.
Because it feels real.
Exactly. It feels like it's coming from someone you know.
Yeah.
And it's playing on that trust.
Wow. Okay, so it's more convincing and it's more targeted.
Yeah.
And the speed at which these can be created is also a factor, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, how quickly can these things be made now?
Yeah, the turnaround time for generating deepfakes is shrinking really rapidly.
Yeah.
So in the past, it might have taken weeks or months to create a really convincing deepfake.
Yeah.
But now we're talking hours or even minutes.
Oh, wow.
In some cases.
So they can basically pump these things out.
Yeah. And react to events.
Right.
Or
in real time, almost.
Almost in real time.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's much faster.
And they're not just using video anymore.
Right.
Like, it's not just a video of someone.
It's not just one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, the combination of video and audio is particularly dangerous.
Right. Right.
Because, we're kind of wired to trust what we see and hear.
Of course.
So if we see and hear something that seems believable, it can be very hard to question it.
Like if you get a video call from someone.
Yeah. And it looks like them and it sounds like them.
And they're asking you to do something.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it might even reference, previous conversations or things that only they would know.
Yeah. You'd be like, okay, well.
It can be very hard to kind of see through that.
Right.
And that's the real danger.
So it's like a full-on sensory.
Yeah, it's like a full-on assault on our senses.
Yeah.
Because we're just not used to having to question the reality of what we're seeing and hearing.
And this really has an effect on how we perceive everything online, right?
Absolutely.
It makes us kind of question everything.
It does. It undermines our trust in digital media. It used to be that you could see a photo or a video and you'd assume that it was real.
Yeah.
But now you have to kind of second guess everything.
It's almost like we have to be suspicious of everything.
Almost. Yeah. And that's a real problem.
Yeah.
Because it makes it harder to share information.
Right.
It makes it harder to trust the news.
It's exhausting.
It is. It's exhausting. Yeah. It's like a constant battle.
Okay, so the source paints a picture of, not just one type of bad guy who's using these things.
Right.
Right? It's not just, nation states or something like that.
It's a really diverse threat landscape.
Yeah. So who are the kind of main players?
Well, you have everything from, individual scammers who are just trying to make a quick buck.
Right.
You have organized crime who are using deepfakes for, large-scale fraud. Mm-hmm. And then you do have nation states who are using deepfakes for things like propaganda and disinformation.
Okay, so it really is coming from all angles.
It is. It's a very multifaceted threat.
Okay. So the alert also gives some pretty specific examples of how these things are playing out in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to go through those.
Yeah, I agree.
Because, it's good to have the theory, but let's talk about what's actually happening.
Yeah, I think it brings it home.
Yeah.
When you see real world examples.
Let's start with the corporate world.
Okay.
This idea of CEO fraud using audio deepfakes.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Like, how does that work?
So basically what happens is attackers will create a deepfake audio of a CEO's voice. And they'll use that to trick employees into authorizing fraudulent wire transfers.
So they call up and they say, hey, it's me, the CEO.
Exactly.
I need you to
transfer this money.
Send this money.
Yeah, and they might even use information that only the CEO would know to make it seem more believable.
Wow.
And you know, employees are often trained to follow instructions from their superiors.
Of course.
So they might not even think to question it.
And they just send the money.
Yeah, and by the time they realize it's a scam, the money's gone.
Wow. That's a nightmare.
It is. It's a huge problem.
Okay, so then there's the extortion and blackmail angle, which is even more disturbing.
Yeah, this is the really dark side of deepfakes.
Yeah.
You know, attackers will use deepfakes to create non-consensual, intimate content.
Right.
And they'll use that to blackmail people.
Oh, wow.
You know, they'll threaten to release the video unless the victim pays them money or does what they say.
And that can be incredibly damaging.
It can be absolutely devastating.
Right.
You know, it can ruin reputations.
Yeah.
It can lead to psychological trauma.
Yeah.
It's a really horrific crime.
Yeah, and there's the political angle, which is kind of terrifying.
It is. Because, you know, deepfakes can be used to manipulate public opinion.
Right.
They could be used to interfere with elections.
Yeah. Right.
You know, imagine a deepfake video of a political leader saying something inflammatory.
Yeah.
Or doing some things that they would never actually do.
Right.
That could have a huge impact on the outcome of an election.
It undermines democracy.
It does.
Yeah.
It undermines our ability to trust the information that we're seeing.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's identity theft.
Yeah.
Which is
kind of a classic.
Yeah.
But deepfakes take it to a whole new level.
Yeah. How so?
Well, you know, a lot of systems these days rely on facial recognition for security.
Of course.
But deepfakes can be used to bypass those systems.
Oh, wow.
So someone could create a deepfake video of you and use it to access your bank account or your social media accounts or even your work accounts.
Oh, wow.
So it's a really serious threat.
Right. And then there's the stock market, which is maybe not as obvious, but it's definitely a target.
How would they target the stock market?
Well, imagine a deepfake video of a CEO announcing that their company is going bankrupt.
Right.
Or that they've been hit by a major scandal.
Right.
Now, that could cause the company's stock price to plummet.
Yeah.
And it could cause a lot of chaos in the market.
Right.
So it's definitely something that attackers are interested in.
It's economic warfare almost.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then there's the reputational damage.
Yeah.
Which can be
just as damaging as financial damage.
Yeah.
You know, imagine a deepfake video of you doing something that you would never do.
Right.
Saying something offensive or engaging in some kind of illegal activity.
Yeah.
Now that could really damage your reputation.
Yeah.
It could cost you your job.
Yeah.
It could ruin your relationships.
Right.
It's a very real threat. Okay, so given all of this, how optimistic should we be about our ability to detect these things?
Yeah.
Is technology on our side?
Well, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game.
Okay.
You know, as the AI that's used to create deepfakes gets better,
the
AI that's used to detect deepfakes also has to get better.
So it's a constant.
It's a constant arms race.
Arms race.
Yeah, and the attackers are always looking for new ways to fool the detectors.
Yeah, and the source mentions that the things that used to give deepfakes away are becoming harder to spot. Yeah,
you know, it used to be that deepfakes had these kind of telltale signs.
Right.
You know, like the blinking patterns were off, or the lighting was inconsistent, or the audio sounded a bit robotic.
Yeah.
But those kind of obvious flaws are starting to disappear as the AI gets better.
So what do we do? I mean, if we can't see them.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
One of the things that we need to do is develop better detection tools.
Okay.
But those tools have to be really sophisticated because they have to be able to keep up with the rapid evolution of deepfake technology.
And I imagine it's also hard just because of the sheer volume of content online.
Yeah. I mean,
like it's impossible.
That's right.
To check everything.
It's impossible to check everything in real time.
Yeah, and it's not just the detection, right? There's no real standard way to prove that something's authentic.
That's a big problem.
Yeah.
Because without some kind of universal system for authenticating digital media, it's very difficult to prove that something is real or fake.
So like a digital watermark or something like that?
Yeah, like a digital signature or watermark
that
would allow us to trace the origin of a piece of content and verify that it hasn't been tampered with.
So that would make it easier to spot the fakes.
Exactly. Yeah. We'd make it much harder to pass off a deep fake as the real thing.
Okay.
But we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. And running these detection algorithms, I imagine.
It's computationally expensive.
Expensive.
Yeah. It takes a lot of computing power.
Okay. So the big takeaway here is that we can't just play defense.
That's right.
We can't just try to catch these things.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
We need to be more proactive.
Right.
We need to think about deterrence.
Okay.
And that's where these 5 strategies come in.
Okay, so strategy number 1 is raising awareness and promoting digital literacy.
Yeah.
So basically we're talking about educating people about deepfakes.
Absolutely.
So they know what they are, how they work, and how to spot them.
And I think it's not just about understanding the technology. Yeah. It's also about developing those critical thinking skills.
Yeah. Right.
You know, learning to question the information that you're seeing online.
Yeah.
Learning to verify sources.
Yeah.
Learning to think critically about the content that you're consuming.
So if something seems too good to be true.
Exactly.
Or too
common. It's really trying to trigger an emotional response.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe step back.
Step back.
Yeah.
Take a breath.
And for businesses specifically, there needs to be training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially around things like CEO fraud.
Yeah.
Because that's such a common tactic. So employees need to be trained on how to verify requests.
Right.
How to identify potential deep fakes.
Right.
And how to report suspicious activity.
Yeah. Okay, so strategy number 2 is implementing strong authentication and verification protocols.
So this is about making it harder for attackers to gain access to our accounts and systems.
Even if they have a deep fake.
Exactly. So things like multi-factor authentication are really important because it means that even if someone steals your password, they still can't get into your account.
Right.
Because they need that second factor of authentication, whether it's code from your phone or a fingerprint scan or something else.
Okay, and then the alert also mentions this idea of out-of-band verification.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So out-of-band verification is basically about confirming critical requests through a separate channel.
Okay.
So if you get an email asking you to transfer a large sum of money, you don't just click on the link in the email.
Right.
You pick up the phone and call the person who sent you the email and verify that they actually sent it.
So that it's really them.
Exactly.
And what about biometrics?
Yeah.
Like, can deepfakes fool facial recognition?
They can.
Yeah.
Which is why liveness detection is so important.
Okay, so what is liveness detection?
So liveness detection is basically a way of making sure that the person who's trying to authenticate is actually a real live person and not a photo or a video or a deepfake.
So they have to do something.
Yeah, they might have to blink or smile or turn their head.
Okay.
And the system can analyze those movements to make sure that it's a real person.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it's getting very sophisticated.
Yeah. Okay, strategy number 3 is developing and adopting media authentication standards. Yeah. So this is about
creating a system where we can verify the authenticity of digital media.
Okay. So how would that work?
Well, one way to do it would be to embed digital watermarks into original content.
Okay.
So when a photo or a video is created, it would have this invisible watermark that would be very difficult to remove.
Right.
And then if someone tried to tamper with the content, the watermark would be broken.
Okay.
And we would know that the content had been altered.
So it's like a tamper-proof seal.
Exactly. It's like a digital fingerprint for that piece of content.
And the alert also mentions these secure content creation pipelines. What does that mean?
So this is about controlling the process of creating and distributing content.
Okay.
So for example, if a government agency is releasing a video statement, they would use a secure recording environment.
Okay.
They would use tamper-proof editing software.
Right.
And they would distribute the video through a secure channel
Right.
So that there's no way for someone to intercept the video and tamper with it.
Okay, so it's about locking down the whole process.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
So you can be more confident that the content is authentic.
Yeah. Okay, strategy number 4 is increasing the cost and difficulty of creating malicious deepfakes.
Right.
So this is about making it harder for the bad guys to do their thing.
And there are a few ways to do that.
Yeah, so what are some of the ways?
Well, one way is to make the tools harder to get.
Okay.
So platforms could crack down on websites that are selling deepfake software or sharing deepfake tutorials.
Yeah.
Another way is to develop methods for watermarking AI models.
Okay.
So that if a deepfake is created, we can trace it back to the AI model that was used to create it.
So it's like leaving a fingerprint on the deepfake itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of course, there's the legal side of things.
Right.
So governments could pass laws that make it illegal to create or distribute malicious deepfakes.
And that would make people think twice.
Exactly.
Before they do it.
Because there would be real consequences if they got caught.
Yeah. Okay. And then strategy number 5 is AI-powered detection.
Yeah.
So we're back to detection.
Right.
But this time it's about using AI to fight AI.
That's right.
So how does that work?
Well, basically what happens is we train AI models to recognize the patterns that were common in deepfakes.
Okay.
And those models can then be used to scan online content.
Right.
And flag potential deepfakes.
Okay.
And that can help to limit the spread of malicious content.
So it's not a perfect solution?
It's not a silver bullet.
But it's another layer of defense.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got a lot to think about here. But let's bring this conversation a little closer to home.